Welcome everyone to Not That Media. My name is John, and in today's video, come along with me as I do my August horror haul. Kicking off August, we've got 3 DVDs, and jumping straight in with the first one, Sadako. This is to be regarded as the Ring 3 in the Japanese timeline and the Japanese continuity. It involves a character being admitted to a hospital, being helped by a psychologist. She has no memory, she doesn't know where she is, she doesn't know even her own name. The psychologist obviously begins to investigate, and strange things start to happen around her. This is in tandem with the psychologist's brother, who is an aspiring YouTuber and is somewhat wavering in the YouTube universe, and is desperate to find that one big video, that one big thing to make him viral and get up there yet again. So he has the fantastic idea to go and investigate a burned down house where 5 people have died. It's safe to say that both storylines naturally involve Sadako, and they converge into obviously a conclusion. I'm not going to give you any spoilers. I was actually very impressed with this film. My wife and I, when you find out about these films, and I found it by complete accident looking on YouTube and eBay, I'm always a bit wary when you find out, or technically, I think this is technically speaking the Ring 12 if you include all the American films and the various splinter films. But actually this is a very pleasant surprise. Sadako is up to her usual tricks, but there is a good deal of time dedicated to actually expand on the mythology and the origin story of Sadako. Those of you who are familiar with both the Japanese and the American versions of the Ring will know obviously Sadako's backstory. That is not damaged, it is not broken in any way, it is simply expanded on, and I actually enjoyed it. It's a very good time, it's very creepy, very atmospheric, exactly what you expect from Japanese movies. Very good, strong recommend. Staying in the Ring universe, my next release that I managed to get my hands on is The Ring Virus. Now, this is a very strange one because, for all intents and purposes, this is The Ring, aka the original 1998 Japanese movie. However, The Ring Virus is a remake that came out less than a year after The Ring itself. Reason being, and I find this really fascinating, is that at the time of The Ring's original release, South Korea actually had a ban on all Japanese cultural imports, so we're not allowed to actually bring The Ring to Japan. So Japan and South Korea formed an agreement to create their own version of The Ring called The Ring Virus. Now, by the time the ban was lifted in early 1999, The Ring Virus was so heavily and far into production, it was decided just to simply continue it and finish the film. So what we have here is a completely different version of the same movie. When I say a remake, I know people get very kind of like, oh, I'm not too interested in remakes, but what I would say about this version is it actually much more closely follows the book, even though, and that was how it was advertised, that it's a much more faithful adaptation, even though they take quite a few of the tropes from The Ring, such as a female antagonist and various bits and pieces. It does expand on the origins, mythos, storyline of the original Ring movie. It's about 20 minutes longer as well than the original Ring. So my wife and I watched it. I'm not going to say it's better than the original Ring. It is simply an alternative version of The Ring. I picked this up for £4. If you look on eBay, you will find copies for £4 or £5. Don't be pulled in by those people talking about it being out of print. This is an out of print DVD, but you can pick this up from trusted sources on eBay for £4 as opposed to the £20 to £30 that some people are trying to sell this at. I wouldn't pay a fortune for this film. It's a recommend if you're a Ring fan, if you just want to see a different version, an alternative universe. But other than that, it's just a nice little experiment in what was made during a time of bans. But if you like the original Ring, there's probably not too much more for you to get out of this one other than just more story. My last DVD pickup this month, and again was another eBay buy, and was again I think about £3-4, but it's a film that I had no idea existed until a few months ago when I was watching a YouTube video about the top 10 horror films you've never seen and must see. So this film is called Dead End, and it features as their main principal cast Ray Wise and Lin Shaye. Now obviously horror fans of Lin Shaye will be completely aware of Lin Shaye's body of work. I'm going to be doing a separate video about that as part of my For the Love of Horror series, so check that out if you're interested. But in a nutshell, it kind of follows the vein, it came out in 2002, it kind of follows the vein of urban legend and Scream in that it is a dark comedy horror film with characters aware of the tropes and aware of where they are. But to go through the story, a family are driving on Christmas Eve for the 20th year in a row to Lin Shaye's parents for a happy Christmas. Of course, the family in the car are completely dysfunctional, completely unhappy. The husband doesn't want to go. Everyone seems to resent each other. Everyone seems to have little secrets and things like that. There's two teenage kids and one of them's boyfriend in the car. And they stop to pick up a hitchhiker, a lady hitchhiker carrying a baby. It becomes very quickly apparent that not only is there something very wrong with this lady, but the baby is dead. That's not really a spoiler, this is just the first 5 minutes. And it's safe to say that bad things, supernatural things start to happen to this family. It is okay, is what I would say. Lin Shaye and Ray Wise are fantastic as always. Lin Shaye has a fantastic ability to play absolutely human, normal characters and then completely off-the-wall madcap moments. There's a fantastic scene, very mild spoiler, so maybe skip 30 seconds if you don't want to know about it. But when one of the children are killed on the road, they're teenagers, not children, one of the teenagers are killed on the road, Lin Shaye's character effectively loses her mind. And she is in the back scribbling and drawing whilst her husband and the other family members are trying to work out what the hell to do. And she leans forward going, look, I've done a picture of our son. And the picture is a horrible stick figure which is completely mutilated in the road. It's one of those really dark comedy, like horror moments that I think only Lin Shaye can really deliver. It's a solid film. What I would say, it is 2002. This film is very much in the wake of Scream, Urban Legend, I Know What You Did Last Summer. So up until the last 45 seconds of this film, I really enjoyed it, but it has a very cliched 2002 ending that I kind of feel it spoilt it. It's one of those where if you're paying attention, you probably very quickly figure out half the twists or what's going on, but sometimes you just want to enjoy a film for what it is, and it's another Christmas horror film to add to the list. So if you could pick it up for a few quid, if it's free online or streamable, give it a look, but don't expect the world. It's a very early 2000s horror film. Jumping straight to the 4Ks, there's only two this month and I'll go through them very quickly. The first is Poltergeist. I picked this up purely because although I already owned it on Blu-ray, when you go to HMV and perhaps other retailers, depending on where you are, sometimes when you go up to the counter, they have those what they call the impulse buys. So if you buy any item in the store, you can pick up this for $4.99 or $9.99. This was at the front for $9.99 and I thought, why not? You know, I think 4Ks have a tendency to be very overpriced at retail. I think £25 for a 4K of a film that you can pick up for £5 or £10 is a little bit of a jip, to be perfectly honest, especially older films, because no matter how hard they try, it never looks as great as they claim. I mean, it's the same film, just a little bit cleaner with a little bit more colour. I'm a big 4K fan. There are great 4Ks out there, but I'm not one of these people who has to own everything on 4K. But it was $9.99. It's a classic film, Tobe Hooper and Steven Spielberg masterpiece. A family move into a home unwittingly unaware that it has been built on an Indian burial ground. Things start to happen, hauntings begin to happen. It's a solid film, great practical effects, great special effects, great acting. I'm not going to talk too much about it, like I say, because if you haven't seen Poltergeist and you're watching a horror haul, you need to jump on it straight away. So yeah, just a nice quick recommend, Poltergeist. My second 4K, nice and simple, is a film that I feel sometimes doesn't get the love it deserves. Certainly over here in the UK, you cannot pick up any kind of decent Blu-ray or DVD release, which led me to get my hands on a Scream Factory 4K. Comes with a Blu-ray in it as well, but obviously that's region locked if you don't have a region-free Blu-ray player, and that is Krampus, the spiritual sequel to Trick or Treat, which same director and writer involved in it. This is a fantastic film, and like I say, definitely in the UK, a really underrated film. The Krampus, which is regarded in real like folklore and mythology as the dark side of Christmas, the one who comes to punish the naughty kids and exists in the shadow of Santa, is very much the main antagonist of this film. He is the monster. When a little boy's family all get together for Christmas and they're bickering and fighting and shouting and swearing at each other, the little boy loses hope in Christmas, rips up his letter to Santa and throws it into the fire. This attracts the attention of the Krampus and his hordes of monsters, including killer gingerbread men, creatures and toys in the attic, and of course the Krampus himself. Now, the cast in this film is spectacular. You've got Adam Scott, you've got Toni Collette, you've got the guy who I can never remember what his name is, from Anchorman and The American Office, all playing fantastic roles. It is, again, a comedy horror. It is played for laughs, but it does not shy away from the horror. The horror is really good. There's so much practical effects in this. In fact, I think there's very little special effects, with the exception of maybe the gingerbread men. The Krampus is a fully working, I don't know if he's an animatronic, a puppet, a person, a combination of all three. This is a great Christmas film. It's a real good laugh. It's really fun and a strong recommend. And it continues the fantastic trend, which I keep telling to people, which is if you are in a film of any degree, never be a child of Toni Collette, because you will never have a good time. She has, maybe a video for another day, an ongoing joke, which I have, is the fact that if you are a child of Toni Collette, by the end of the film, you're going to be dead possessed or something in between. And this film continues that trend as well. Real good fun. This is the naughty cut, by the way. I should maybe mention that this is... It's a slightly extended version. I have to admit, I haven't watched this. I've seen Krampus a number of times, but from what I understand, it's got a little bit extra. This isn't like Lord of the Rings, where they've added 15 minutes or 20 minutes. There's a few extra shots, I think a little bit more gore, but on the whole, it's not a film that, if you just want to watch it for the sake of watching it, pick up the Blu-ray for a $5 at HMV or on Amazon, or watch it when it's streaming around the Christmas time. But if you're a collector like me and a big fan of it, this 4K is to be regarded as the definitive version of Krampus. For new releases, there was only 3 that I've picked up this month. The first being Tarot. Now, to be perfectly honest with Tarot, it is a very average film. I don't want to sit here and say it's a bad film. I don't want to be seen as a hater for the sake of hating, but there is nothing new here if you are a seasoned horror fan. If you have been to the cinema recently and seen the trailer for this film, you have seen everything you need to see in the trailer. As always, you know, Hollywood these days likes to ruin quite a lot of films by showing the trailer. This film literally shows you everything that you need to see. The story, to be very quick, a group of friends go to a house which they have rented for the weekend, and whilst they're snooping around in the basement, a girl finds a box of tarot cards. The box looks like it's something that's wandered out of Tales from the Crypt or Hellraiser. It's covered in markings, satanic symbols, and things like that. So, of course, the girl, despite the fact the girl says you shouldn't mess around with other people's tarot cards, then proceeds to give everyone their fortune, including herself. And as a result, the cards and the fortunes given to them come after them, and they are dispatched one by one. And similar to The Ring and everything else like that, it's a race against time to solve the mystery of the deck before the tarot cards come for you and kill you as well. This is not a very good film. I think I was being kind when I was saying it was okay. It is a set piece of scenes which involve kills. The monsters, the tarot cards themselves look fantastic, and the creatures that come from within the tarot cards all look fantastic. The problem is they're not on screen long enough. There's too much time spent wasting with teenage angst and driving one location to drive back to another location to drive back to the original location. It could have all been done in one location, which is the house. It could have been a kind of a Night of the Demons kind of setup where they unleash the tarot cards in the house and it's trying to survive till the next day or trying to escape the house. Instead, it's this kind of weird like road trip movie going backwards and forwards. What I would say is, if you are a fan of fate catching up with you and, you know, be careful what you do and a series of events that lead to your death, this film's already been done, and it's already been done 100 times better, and it's already got 5 sequels and it's Final Destination. So if you want a film about, you know, fate catching up, like I say, get yourself onto Final Destination, because it does this so much better. The monsters are criminally underused. The set pieces and kills are criminally short. It's just not a great time, unfortunately. Next up, and arguably at the time of recording, I've only watched this once at the cinema, and so far is maybe my most disappointing movie of 2024, but we've still got a few months to go, is The Strangers Chapter 1. Now, just to preface this, I love The Strangers 1, and I love Strangers Prey by Night. I know Prey by Night has got a bit of a bad rap, but both occasions I've had a really good time, really enjoyed it, really enjoyed the aesthetic, enjoyed the music, enjoyed the kills. I think the trio are really cool and scary. After the events of the second one, I was somewhat confused about how there could be more, because, and it has been documented, so this isn't a spoiler or anything, this is a sequel. So despite the fact it's called The Strangers Chapter 1, this is, for all intents and purposes, The Strangers 3. So there is a time jump, it's in modern day setting. So I was very curious to go and see this film to see, well, how, after what happened in the second one, can these people be back? I've got my theories. I'm not going to talk about them on this video because this is meant to be a trilogy. At the time of recording, The Strangers Chapters 2 and 3 are both filmed, but there is no release, there is no confirmation that the series is continuing, whether or not they're going to go to the cinema or straight to streaming or straight to hell, we just don't know. This film, I was very, very disappointed in it. It's got a couple of really... The killers, what I would say is the killers, the trio of the killers are great. They are fantastic. The cast is poor. The main two antagonists or protagonists, a boyfriend and girlfriend couple who are going away. They go to a house, so they rent a house for the weekend again, similar to Tarot, it has to be said. And they're just looking to, have a good time, rekindle their relationship, etc. And then they proceed to be stalked. If I was going to be honest, this is just a shoddy remake of the original. The original is... The Strangers 1, I would argue, is almost perfection. If I had to do a top 5 slasher films, maybe The Strangers would get into that top 5. I hold The Strangers 1 up there as high as Halloween and a few others. It's a great film, so I don't want people to think I'm hating for the sake of hating. This was boring. There are characters who make decisions one moment that are very sensible, and then the next minute they're making completely opposite decisions. They are acting stupid. They are crawling around trying to be really, really quiet, and then they're shouting at each other as soon as they get outside. Logic makes no sense. It was genuinely a disappointing film. It's worth a time if you've got a group of friends and you just want to have a bit of a laugh, but stick with the original, to be perfectly honest. My third and final new release for August comes from yet another resurrection of the Hammer House of Horror, simply called Hammer these days. This company rises and falls as often as Dracula himself, and the first film of their new range of movies is Dr. Jekyll. Now, I have to confess, I was very, very dubious about this film, not because it was yet another iteration of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, but I was a little concerned about Eddie Izzard. Now, Eddie Izzard, she is predominantly known for comedy and has been a comedian for well over 20, 30 years. The idea that she would step into a role as dark and serious as Dr. Jekyll, I was somewhat concerned that maybe Eddie didn't have the ability to do that. I was very wrong, is what I would say. Eddie Izzard is spectacular. It's a very small cast, I think less than 10 people in this film. Eddie Izzard has to carry a significant amount of the film. They are the title character at the end of the day, so Eddie had that responsibility of carrying it. She presents a very positive Dr. Jekyll and a very malevolent Hyde, is what I would say. It's not the usual... Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde story in which Jekyll is normally the personification of sexual frustrations or physical anger or pent-up rage, etc., etc. It's a very different iteration of Hyde, and I think it works very well. The film evokes that very old-school feeling. It is a Hammer film, after all, so you would hope it would walk in the shoes that it's had for a very long time. So it's not a blood and guts fest. It's not a kill every 5 minutes. It's a very slow burn. It's a very classic burn. It's a very character-led movie. I was really impressed with it. So was my wife. We sat and watched it. I wasn't expecting a lot, and I would say this is a very good recommend. If you are on the fence about this and you can stream it, give it a look, give it a go. If you're familiar with Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde as a story, this is a very different twist to it. It's a new take. And as I say, Eddie Izzard is really good. Strong recommend. This next section is my quickfire round. This is just dedicated to Blu-rays that I've either had on DVD and upgraded to Blu-ray, or their newer or better editions that I've simply double-dipped to replace the old one. Straight off the bat, we're going to go in with the 50th anniversary of The Wicker Man. I have owned a number of versions of The Wicker Man, the DVD, the Blu-ray, the final cut, the final mega cut, the definite final cut, the ultimate final cut. This is the 50th anniversary edition. It is a Region B Blu-ray from Studio Canal, and of course stars Christopher Lee and Edward Woodward. When a girl goes missing on Summerisle Island, a local policeman is dispatched to the island to investigate and locate the missing girl. When he gets there, he finds that his Christian beliefs are heavily questioned by the more pagan and druidic cult elements of this island. So as much as it is a mystery about finding a little girl, it is a film about questioning one's beliefs and religions and what happens when you are confronted with a very different take to your own. This is a classic, The Wicker Man. If you have not seen this film, you must see it. I'm not talking about the Nicolas Cage remake, although do give that a watch for laughs. This is a literal cult classic. The film, when the film was being made, the writer of the movie was friends with Christopher Lee and was aware that Christopher Lee was a very heavy historian into all things occult and things like that. So he wrote the script and sent it to Christopher Lee, saying famously, "I know I can't afford you to be in this film because you're a megastar. However, I'd like you to have a look at my script." Christopher Lee read the script and was so impressed and so wanted to be part of this film, he waived all fees to be in this film. So Christopher Lee, I don't know about afterwards in terms of obviously rumination afterwards, but certainly up front, Christopher Lee took no money for this movie. He worked for free, he worked hard for free, and then he spent a considerable amount of time marketing, advertising, and pushing the film. This is the film that Christopher Lee kind of heralds as his break from the Hammer House of Horror. He was looking to escape the shadow or the cape of Dracula, and The Wicker Man is it. Now, if you are relatively young, I would say probably 25 or below, what I would say about this film is it is a very slow film. Do not expect murder, mischief, mayhem, all that kind of stuff. This is a film that is all about the mystery and all about the character and builds to one of horror's most fantastic climaxes. It is one of these films that I think today maybe the impact isn't quite as prevalent. Very similar to The Exorcist, I would say, because Christian values, religious connotations in 2024 are nowhere near what they were in 1973. The audience was aghast by this film when they saw it, when they went to the cinema. I mean, you hear stories these days of people running out of Terrifier 2, being sick and all this kind of stuff, but The Wicker Man was up there in that kind of like acknowledgement of shock, like the horror film which would actually question religious beliefs and actually would question Christianity in such a way that people were aghast by it. It's not supernatural is what I would say. It's not an Exorcist film. I know when you talk about religion, people think exorcism and things like that, but this is a classic. It's a 2-disc edition. It's got new features. It's got all 3 cuts. I mean, I own so many different versions of this. If I haven't said it already, I had the DVD, I had the final cut, I had the finished cut, the director's cut, the final director's cut. This has got as many re-releases, I think, as Star Wars, but this has got 3 versions. It's got the final cut, the director's cut, and the original theatrical cut. Strong recommend if you are a horror fan and a British horror fan. This is a classic. Next up is the American version of The Grudge 2. Now, I'm a massive fan of The Grudge in all of its iterations. I like the original Ju-On Curses, then the Japanese versions of The Grudge, aka Ju-On and Ju-On 2. Really like The Grudge 1, 2, and I even have a soft spot for The Grudge 3. I know a lot of people are not a massive fan of that, and I even enjoyed the later sequel. It's not a remake, called The Grudge, which actually featured Lin Shaye in it as well, and I quite like the next Netflix TV show. So I've always had a special place for The Grudge. For those of you who are not familiar with The Grudge, it involves Japanese mythology believes that if somebody is killed under tremendous sadness and anger, a curse or Ju-On is placed on the property. So Kayako, who is our monster, and her son Toshio are murdered under horrible circumstances and curse the house. The thing that makes The Grudge special, I think, over anything else is that in order to be inflicted in the curse, you simply have to step into the house. You don't have to be good, evil, right, wrong. You don't have to watch a tape. You don't have to go to Crystal Lake. You don't have to go to sleep. You just simply step in the house, and no matter what you are, who you are, the curse consumes you, and Kayako will come to collect her vengeance, and you will become part of the curse born anew, and The Grudge continues. So the first film involves Sarah Michelle Gellar in Japan having to learn, discover, and try to stop The Grudge. And of course, The Grudge 2 is the sequel to that. So after the events of the first one, Sarah Michelle Gellar is hospitalized. Her sister is sent to Japan to collect her, only to realise that the curse is very much not gone and the grudge is stronger than ever before. I think this is a solid film. It's a really good time. It's one of these weird situations where The Grudge 2 is available on Blu-ray, but not 1 and 3, so you have to get them on DVD, which is a very odd situation. Yeah, it's well worth a look. Strong recommend. And one of the just a little side fun for you. I was a fan of The Grudge 2. I saw it all the way back on the 25th of October 2006 at 6:30 for £6 in the Odeon. So yeah, always enjoyed keeping my cinema tickets, and I always stick them inside the boxes. So when I upgraded from DVD to Blu-ray and I was putting the DVD back in its case, this little thing fell out. I totally forgot about it. It's always fun when you find these little things. Next up is The House of the Devil. Now, for most of you, I believe you can actually stream this on Amazon or Shudder. So I bought it simply because it was cheap, but yeah, I have to confess that this was a film that I wasn't normally going to go running to, but after the real enjoyment of watching X and Pearl, I was very interested to go back over Ty West's catalogue of movies that led to that franchise. This is a great film. It claims it's based on a true story, but it's not based on a true story. It draws upon real cultural phenomena such as satanic panic and babysitter stalking, or all that kind of stuff. So it's one of those where, like Texas Chainsaw, it claims it's based on a true story, but it's not based on a true story. A girl, I think it's set in the 70s, it must be because it's Satanic Panic. She is at school or college and she needs money. She wants to move out of the college dorm because her friend is just constantly having sex with people, and she's spending her whole night out wandering the halls, and when she comes back the next morning, the sock is still very much on the door. So she's had enough of it, basically. She wants to move out. After a fantastic cameo from Dee Wallace, they find a property and she needs to get the money quickly for the deposit, or not even the deposit, just the first month's rent. Whilst wandering the campus waiting for her friend to finish up with her latest conquest, she discovers on the notice board a simple white piece of paper that says babysitters needed. She rips it off and she agrees to babysit for a night. When she gets there, trying to stay relatively spoiler free here, when she gets to the house, it turns out that the babysitting job is not quite what it was supposed to be, but after a very desperate couple offered the lady $400 to basically do 5 hours work, she is not going to shy away from that. She needs the money, and this is a perfect opportunity. Of course, she's left alone in the house, she's given her orders, and things start to unravel very quickly. This is a great film. I was really shocked how good this film was. Again, it's really hard not to spoil it without talking about it too much. What I have just said to you is about the first 10 minutes of the film. It's a 90-minute film. Like so many of the films I've been talking about today, it spends a lot of time building an unnerving feeling, a slow burn. Something's not quite right. You just know something's going to happen. And whereas quite a lot of films that kind of like sizzle out, or the outcome is disappointing, your head creates much worse things. So when you get, you're kind of like, is that it? This had a really good ending, a really strong ending, and I was very impressed by it. It's filmed in that 1970s way. It feels very, very genuine to the time period in a similar way to X. So if you're a fan of X and you're a fan of Pearl, and like me, you're waiting for the Blu-ray of Maxine to come out, and you just want that Ty West fix, The House of the Devil is a strong recommend. Next up is a film that, technically speaking, I should have put in the new release pile, but it was a very odd one in that I pre-ordered this. It was due to come out this week, and yet when the day came, no order was placed, nothing was dispatched. So I got very confused about why this release was not available. And I'm talking about What We Do in the Shadows. So 101 Films has a new release, but when I went to HMV to see if I could pick up a copy on the day of release, not only could I not find the 101 Films version of What We Do in the Shadows, but I actually found the earlier Metrodome release, which was even £5 cheaper than the new version. So this is one of these really odd situations where there's actually two versions of exactly the same film, exactly the same extras, everything, even the cover, the art is exactly the same, yet one company wants to sell it to you for £12 and another for £7. So if you're a fan of What We Do in the Shadows and you're looking for a copy, don't go running to the 101 Films release straight away. See if you can get your hands on the Metrodome release, because as I say, they're exactly the same. I mean, what can I say about What We Do in the Shadows? This is a great film. It is a comedy, is what I would say, but it is very much in the vein of the world of horror. To give it a couple of sentences, because I don't want to go into too much detail because you just need to enjoy it. Imagine The Office or Parks and Recreation, but they're following a family of vampires. That is the film in a sentence. The Flight of the Conchords duo, Jermaine Clement and Taika Waititi, are writing and directing this. It is fantastically funny. It's filmed in New Zealand. It is a franchise now. It has 2 spin-off sequels. It has a full-blown TV show, What We Do in the Shadows, that has had 5 seasons. I think that's just ended. And also 2 characters, the police officers who make an appearance in this film when they are called to a disturbance at the property, have their own show called Wellington Paranormal. This is a fantastic universe. If you are a fan of that kind of dry, observational, cringe comedy, the David Brents, the Michael Scotts, things like that, What We Do in the Shadows, as I say, is imagine if it was Dracula. I mean, he's not playing Dracula, but imagine following a group of vampires around. This is such a funny film. Strong recommend. I'm not going to go into detail because you've just got to watch this film. It might be free to stream again as always, but I always enjoy this film. It always makes me laugh, so strong recommend. This next one might be a little bit of a curveball for some people because this film is old. It is Dead of Night. It is released in 1945 and was Ealing Studios' first and maybe best toe dipping into the world of horror. It is a PG, but again, it's 1945, so you're not going to get blood and guts. It's a film that I have seen. I had it on DVD, but I think my DVD was laser burnt. So when I saw there was a Blu-ray, I thought, why not pick it up? But I have to confess, I haven't seen it in over a decade, I think. So I can't sit here and talk too much about it. But the back, what I'll do, I'll read the back. It says, this represents a departure from Ealing Studios from the classic comedy mode and instead is a spooky psychological thriller made up of 5 chilling ghost stories. An architect visits a country house only to get trapped in a reoccurring nightmare involving tales of the occult told by fellow guests at the manor. So it is an old school, it's literally old school anthology movie. I mean, when I watched it, I really enjoyed it. I remember, you can see on the cover, there's the doll. There's a fantastic scene about a man playing golf who is being haunted by a man who killed him and is distracting him. So I think although they say it's not a comedy, it is. It still has a little bit of black humour to it. I picked it up, like I say, because I wanted to replace it. I'm really looking forward to watching it. I haven't had time to watch it ahead of this video, but I know that this is a very big influence on people such as Mark Gatiss and the League of Gentlemen. The inspiration for it's one of those where I don't think the film was intentionally trying to be funny sometimes, but they drew comedy from that. So Dead of Night, 1945, a good recommend. I haven't seen it in a very long time, so I'm not going to say a strong recommend, but I remember enjoying it the first time, but it's been a very long time since I've seen this. Next and last in the UK Blu-rays is Dead Silence. This is a very interesting film in that I feel like it's kind of been forgotten. After the success of Saw 1, 2 and 3, Leigh Whannell and James Wan left the franchise and were looking for their next project. So before they ended up getting onto the fantastic success which is Insidious and The Conjuring, their next horror bout was Dead Silence. It's a very interesting situation, and having rewatched it for the first time in many years, is that this kind of acts as a bit of a halfway house for these guys. Like the editing and the music is very Saw. In fact, at times it was a little bit distracting in that it felt like music from a Saw movie, and yet the tone and the ideas and even some of the shots would later go on to be very, very heavily informing Annabelle and Insidious. It's got ghosts and dolls and ventriloquism and all this kind of stuff. Things that when you watch it, it's just an interesting evolution for these guys, is moving away from torture porn that is the Saw franchise into Dead Silence, which is much more of a supernatural ghost story kind of tale, but with a twist, as always. You know, they're still staying with their Saw. There's got to be a twist at the end, kind of a situation. And then they moved obviously on to Insidious and The Conjuring, respectively. So if you're a fan of James Wan, Leigh Whannell, any of their films, I mean, Invisible Man, Leigh Whannell's Invisible Man's a fantastic film. If you're a fan of Saw, if you're a fan of The Conjuring or Insidious movies, this is a definite recommend. In a very quick nutshell, I'll read the back. Ever since Mary Shaw was hunted down and killed, the small town of Ravensfair has been haunted by horrific deaths. When a local man's wife is brutally murdered, he returns home to unravel the terrifying legend and the reason why when you see her, you should never scream. it's a great film. It's a harmless film, is what I would say. Get it, enjoy it. It's not something I'll probably run to every week or every month. It's good on the shelf every couple of years. Give it a look and just have a good time. Getting to the final 5 Blu-rays now, and 4 out of 5 of these are Scream Factory Region A Blu-rays, so you will need a multi-region Blu-ray player if you're intending to buy these. A couple of them are American exclusives, as in you can't get them in the UK, and the final one, the 5th one, is a collector's edition Region A Blu-ray, which I'm really happy to get my hands on, but I'll go through that in a minute. So, speeding through these Scream Factory releases, the first is Stephen King's Graveyard Shift. This film is bad, is what I would say. Love Stephen King, massive Stephen King fan, love reading the books. I am on a mission to own and see every single Stephen King thing. I understand they can't all be winners, but this thing was bad. This is from his short stories era, and one of his earliest short stories. They drag this thing out. This thing could have been 15 minutes as part of a Creepshow movie or a Creepshow TV show, but instead, the people who own it, after the success of Pet Sematary, just to put this into a time context, Pet Sematary came out and everyone was clamoring for King. Everyone wanted to get their hands on the next big Stephen King book or novel or novella or whatever it is. So this is Paramount's follow-up to Pet Sematary. It is awful. The only good thing in this film is Brad Dourif, who plays the Exterminator, has no real name. He's in a couple of key scenes and then is quietly killed off unceremoniously, and you never even see his body properly again. So the only reason to watch this is Brad Dourif. You would think if you had an actor like Brad Dourif, you would cast him in a major part, like the main antagonist, which is the owner of the cotton factory, which is this is set at. But in a nutshell, when an abandoned textile mill is reopened, several employees meet mysterious deaths. The link between the killings is the hour, all occurring between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. The Graveyard Shift. The sadistic mill foreman has chosen a group to clean up the mill's rat-infested basement, but what the workers find is a subterranean maze of tunnels leading to the cemetery and an unimaginable horror that comes alive in the dead of night. Sounds okay, sounds good. It's terrible. It's really bad. I had to fast forward some of this. There's some amazing rat effects, some like real life rats being used in some really cool ways. The main hero is a guy with a slingshot and a can of Pepsi, and that's his weapon. I'm not even joking. This is a bad film. Not recommended. Next up, and I haven't really got an enormous amount to say about this because I haven't seen it yet because it only came fairly recently, is a version of Phantom of the Opera with Robert Englund as the Phantom. It's also got Bill Nighy in it, so I'm quite intrigued to watch this. During the time when Freddy was at his highest, the big Freddy boom, obviously Robert Englund was trying his hardest to, whilst he was happy being Freddy, he also wanted to get his hands on other roles and be known for other roles. So why not give his hand to the Phantom? You can see on the case, it actually even, this is how popular Freddy hysteria was. I mean, 2024, Freddy Krueger has kind of diminished considerably, but it literally says on the case, Robert Englund was Freddy, now he's the Phantom of the Opera. That's how they sold this film. I've seen the trailer, it looks pretty good. If you're familiar with the Phantom of the Opera, an aspiring opera singer finds herself transported back to Victorian-era London and into the arms of the reclusive, disfigured maestro determined to make her a star. The silver-throated Christine enjoys success through the arrangements of her new lover, Robert Englund, until she realises that he has been committing unspeakably grisly murders in her honour and won't stop until he's completed his masterpiece in blood. It's not a musical, it is a horror film. Robert Englund holds us in very high esteem. You can pick this up in the UK on Blu-ray, kind of a vanilla release for about £8. Can't say anything more than that, but if you're a Robert Englund fan, obviously it's a recommend. If you're a Phantom of the Opera fan, this is just a different version of Phantom of the Opera. So yeah, I'll find out what this is actually like soon enough. Next up, and it's not strictly horror, but it's in that universe, so I'm going to count it, and some people do, even though it's not a proper horror film, is Teen Wolf. Now, Teen Wolf, to give it a couple of sentences, Michael J. Fox, in one of his very earliest movie debuts, I think this was actually released a month after Back Back to the Future. So during that big boom of Back to the Future, Michael J. Fox actually had 2 films in the cinema in the space of 3 months. He's fantastic in this film, by the way. But anyway, he plays a downtrodden high schooler who can't really get a break, no one really likes. But with the advent, it's not really explained fully, but with the advent of perhaps puberty and a full moon, it is revealed that he has the ability to turn into a werewolf. Not a snarling, murderous werewolf, but effectively Michael J. Fox as a werewolf. And he, after he is rumbled and it is revealed that he is a werewolf, rather than try to kill him or burn him or disfigure or whatever it is, they make him the most popular kid in school, and he becomes one of the main players of the local basketball team, and suddenly becomes the coolest guy on campus. It's harmless, is what I would say. It's one of these strange films that I don't want to speak too illy, because I really like Michael J. Fox and he's great in this film, but it's one of those films that if you haven't seen this for a very long time and you're not a massive fan, maybe leave it alone. It's not as good as I remembered. The Scream Factory release is fantastic. It's got a huge documentary on it. It's got a new 2K scan. It's got loads of stuff. So if you're a fan, this is a goldmine of Teen Wolf information and history. But I have to confess, this is one of those films that, having watched it again recently, I probably would have rather kept it in the recesses of my mind. You know, rose-tinted glasses, remembering how great this film used to be. There's some great scenes in it. It is a fantastic time. If you just enjoy some very light-hearted, silly comedy. If you want to see Michael J. Fox as a werewolf in a basketball match, this is your film. So it is a recommend, but I wouldn't go out of your way to pay anything expensive for it. Last in the Scream Factory Blu-rays, and this is another film that I purchased as part of my ongoing For the Love of Horror franchise videos, is the 1980s remake of The Blob, starring a very young Shawnee Smith. In a nutshell, this is a remake of the original 1950s The Blob movie. A mysterious asteroid crashes on the Earth, and inside it is a weird pink amorphous blob. This blob then proceeds to eat and destroy everything it can get its hands on, local people, building anything it can, and Shawnee Smith is kind of caught in a little bit of a love triangle, and people are trying to escape the town. To read the back, the blob is back in this horrific tale about a vile, malignant life form that crashes to Earth in a cozy rural American town. Untroubled by conscience or intellect, the blob does only one thing, and it does it well. It eats anything and everything that moves, men, women, children, and tonight it wants to swallow the town. The original version of the Blob thrilled and terrified audiences back in the 1950s. Now the oozing, gooey killer is back with a whole new high-tech look. What was once only suggested now comes to life with state-of-the-art special effects in the tradition of such thrilling remakes as The Thing and The Fly. Now, ironically, because I haven't actually read the back of this before, ironically, what I was going to say is I'm going to hold this version of The Blob up there with John Carpenter's The Thing. This is a great film. John Carpenter's The Thing is a great film. This is a disgusting film, is what I would say. When the kills happen, when the blob goes on to people, you see every melted flesh, every melted eyeball, you see hair pulled out, skin coming off. It's done in that horrible kind of very, very practical way. It makes you feel physically sick, and certainly for me, I was sitting there thinking like, what? You know, it's not a film to sit down and eat and watch, is what I would say. Shawnee Smith's fantastic. It's got a cameo from Bill Moseley as well. It's even got an interview with Bill Moseley in it. So Bill Moseley fans out there, if you're looking for completionists, The Blob. Strong recommend, really good. I wanted it, like I say, because Shawnee Smith is at this year's For the Love of Horror event. So I thought, why not? The price is right. Let's get it picked up. But you can't get this in the UK, as far as I'm aware, yet again. So if you can stream it, give it a definite recommend. Otherwise, you have to import the Scream Factory Region A Blu-ray. Last, and by no means least, is the 20th anniversary edition of Rob Zombie's House of a Thousand Corpses. Really happy to get my hands on this. This is a Region A Blu-ray. The UK has not had a House of a Thousand Corpses UK edition. I had to previously import an Australian version, but I wanted this, A, because it's the 20th anniversary. It's got a poster, a book, art cards, all kinds of bits and pieces in it, but also it's a 2-disc edition, and the second disc features the much anticipated, long wanted, behind the scenes video video footage that Rob Zombie is used to giving. For those of you who don't know, the sequel to this, The Devil's Rejects, features a 3-hour documentary. The Many Lives of Michael Myers for the Rob Zombie Halloween remake had a 4.5-hour documentary. Rob Zombie loves to film everything, chart the progress, and provide it to his audience because he knows what his audience is like. He is his audience, so he knows, like me, I'm quite happy to sit and watch all that stuff and understand how it got made, follow a film from script to screen, see all the different versions of the makeup and all that kind of stuff. It's all in here, so this is a really solid release. The film involves a couple, two couples I should say. One of them is a young Rainn Wilson before The Office. Dwight Schrute himself makes an appearance, and they are going across the country looking for local attractions and oddities. They find Captain Spaulding's gas station, which is famous for its fried chicken and its murder ride on the back. After they agree to go on the murder ride, because this pair's girlfriends don't want to go on it, they do ride it, and Captain Spaulding makes them aware of the legend of Dr. Satan, a local murdering oddball who was murdered by the local townspeople, and his grave and the tree he was hung from are just a stone's throw away from the gas station. So after reluctantly agreeing to give them a map, Captain Spaulding sends them on their way, and this pair of couples go looking for Dr. Satan's grave. In the meantime, and due to heavy rain, they find a hitchhiker played by Sherry Moon Zombie, and she comes into the car and she says, "Oh yeah, I know where Dr. Satan is, I can get you there." But on the way, the tyre is punctured and has a flat. So half the team, or half the couples, I should say, one of the couples stays in the house and the others go to the property. When they go to Sherry Moon's home, the Firefly family, as they are now known, are waiting, and I won't say anything past this because that's maybe the first 10-15 minutes I've just told you. They meet the Firefly family, and Bill Moseley's Otis is the head of this family. This is a crazy film. If you're a fan of like Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, for example, I mean, Bill Moseley is in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, but it's very much in that vein. This is crazy horror, unapologetic, it's bloody, it's gory, it's crazy. It does not want to give you a heavy story. It is not going to give you a deep dive into the mindset of killers or anything else like that. This is people go to a location and bad things happen to them. A really strong recommend. Obviously, the Firefly trilogy, House of 1,000 Corpses, The Devil's Rejects, and Three from Hell are commercially available, but yeah, really happy to get my hands on this. Strong recommend. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do like and subscribe. It was a bit of a mixed bag this month, some great, some not so great. I would definitely recommend The Blob, House of 1,000 Corpses if you have a region-free Blu-ray player, and bottom of the pile, as will be no surprises, Tarot and The Strangers Chapter 1. Sometimes, you take the risk. Sometimes I buy them fully under the knowledge that they may not be good, but that's all part of being the collector. The Strangers Chapter 1 will obviously have to be purchased because as a collector you have to own every sequel, even the bad ones, but I will watch The Strangers Chapter 2 and 3 because I have to be conscious of the fact that the Chapter 1 is part 1. Hopefully there's some surprises in there. Hopefully there's some things in there you've never seen before and you want to go look for them. I would say a little bit of a public service announcement is don't believe the hate of eBay. I know a lot of people like to complain about eBay and call it Feebay and all this kind of stuff, but once again, the majority of the releases you've seen I purchased from eBay and purchased for actually very competitive prices. I will not drink the Kool-Aid when people put out of print or really rare or things like that. One of these, as I said, the example to finish on, I picked up the Ring Virus for £4. There were people selling it for £30+. So, you've got to be careful, do your research, take your time, but never actually say that, I would never say that eBay is a bad source for, rare Blu-rays. Quite the opposite, in fact. I'm a real big eBay fan. So, yeah, don't believe the hype. So, until next time, stay scared.